After some digging around and people asking for other lists from back in the day, now we are going to be covering some lists that were from the year 2000. We have multiple lists from the old Gemini beatdown to this wonderful jar flip deck and also Exodia. So let's take a look at the first list. We have beatdown from the year 2000. This was around the time of July, August, April to August for the Forbidden Unlimited list. This is under the August Forbidden Unlimited list, as I did adjust it a little because a couple of cards were incorrect. But this deck was just focused around normal summoning out big monsters just to attack directly. So you just attack directly with big attack monsters and just keep trying to build your momentum. Now, if they summon or set cards, you could just easily hand rip them because Delinquent Duo and Confiscation was cards, and you can also take their cards with actual Snatch Steals. So that was very powerful, just so you could just swing in taking their monster, and if it's a high attack monster, like Summon Skull, if it's in a type of mirror match, you would be able to just to push for game, as you can see right here. We could just easily and safely push for quite a bit of damage if we need. It's almost enough to kill if we didn't Snatch Steal the last turn, but that's absolutely fine. But this deck is just big beat sticks galore, and as you can see, we just clear out. Next up is this wonderful jar flip deck. This deck is just based around setting Morphing Jar, Needleworm, Morphing Jar number 2, and Cyber Jar just to deck out your opponent pretty fast. And I like playing the decks to see what happens, because right here we could go activate Gristful Charity, we could discard Morphing Jar and Morphing Jar number 2 to the grave, and then we could just set Solemn Judgment and pass the turn. Now what's going to happen, they're going to just normal summon and just do whatever they want to. Just pass the turn. We're going to flip the Cyber Jar, and Cyber Jar is going to trigger, revealing Morphing Jar, Witch of the Black Forest, and Sangan, which we're all going to just set face down. And we're going to hit Ancient Jar, Key Macy, Ancient Jar, Wadapana, and Summon Skull, so they get 5 free monsters on the board. We also have Shallow Grave, and yeah, I'm just going to activate the Dark Hole now, and we get double trigger for a search. And honestly, we're going to grab both Spear Cretins because this is a very good card, since after this card is flipped, when it's sent to the graveyard, both you and your opponent select one monster from your graveyard, your respective graveyards, and special summon it. So you can keep flipping this face up when it's going to be destroyed, and you can keep recycling it over and over again, which is very powerful. After that, we're just going to set 2, set the Spear Cretin, and pass the turn. Now, let's see what's going to happen. They normal summon out a Bone Mouse, which is absolutely fine. They're going to attack into his Spear Cretin and flip face up, and we're going to activate the effect to set the Morphing Jar face down. And that's 1 of 2. We're going to activate Pot of Greed to deep draw more. Set that one. We're going to normal summon out our Witch of the Black Forest, and we don't really need Spirit Cretin. We are going to activate Swords of Revealing Light, and we're going to push for a little damage. This deck is one of the decks that you can push for a little damage here and there, which is very useful. And after that, we're just going to flip up Cyber Jar and use its effect, Waboku. We're just getting all these cards, and we're going to have to discard some, which is fine. They're going to summon out a couple monsters. We have so many cards in our hand, and we're going to just grab something like a Morphing Jar 2. During the end phase, the cards that we don't want in our hand are kind of like Morphing Jar 2, Oroboku, Imperial Iron Wall, and probably Magic Jammer. So they're just going to spend 3 turns trying to build up their board, so we could just set the Cyber Jar. Let's just flip this face up. And that's one cool thing about Imperial Order back in the day. It was not cost. But you get the gist of this. You just, over time, just try and get your opponent's deck out. And you can summon out big monsters off a lot of these cards. So right here, what should you do? Do not pay the cost for that. set the Needleworm, activate a Shallow Grave, set another Needleworm face down, so now you have multiples on the board. And we're just going to pass turn. Sending 4 cards from the hand to the grave. And now they're at 10 cards, so this is where we could just push for a heavier game. We could flip Needleworm, and they're decked out. And we could just destroy their back row and taunt them a little more. But that's how this deck played, is just deck out with Needleworm and try and get to them as fast as you can. And finally, we're going to be taking a look at this weird Exodia list, which is a Cannon Soldier Exodia deck. Now, back in the day, there was a lot of Cannon Soldier decks, and if you notice in quite a lot of lists, you see Sangan, you see Witch of the Black Forest, Man-Eater Bug, Magician of Faith, Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, all these staples at high amounts because they were just that powerful. Now, this deck right here, it isn't using Ultimate Offering, but you really don't need Ultimate Offering because it's more of a tempo deck for what you need to do. Now, once you get things like Last Will, if you also run Ultimate Offering, all that helps. Like right here, Last Will, that's pretty cool, but we don't have our Cannon Soldier yet. But if we did have Cannon Soldier, we would be able to get a couple Exodia pieces, a total of 3 of them, out of the deck. So we're just going to keep that Last Will in our hand, and let's see what we can get. We draw a piece of Exodia, that's pretty good. And you can see it's kind of like Beatdown. If they have something to attack over us, we will Boku. If they have something to blow up our back row or try and summon out a big monster, we could just Solemn Judgment it. So there are parts and pieces to this deck that are helpful. Thunder Dragon's here because it's discard fodder. And that's where we're just going to go, oh yeah, here's a Thunder Dragon for now. And I could have gotten a Cannon Soldier there, but I didn't need to since I already have control of the game. Now, since we have Cannon Soldier, though, this is one thing I do want to show. We're going to activate the Last Will now. We're going to activate Cannon Soldier, tributing Witch of the Black Forest. Witch of Black Forest tributes, grabbing a piece of Exodia, and we're going to resolve the lovely, lovely card of Last Will. We're going to activate Cannon Soldier again, burning for another 500, and we're going to grab another piece of Exodia. Cannon Soldier again, tributing off the Sangan, so we can grab another piece of Exodia. So that's 4 pieces. We're going to activate our Monster Reborn here, summoning back a Witch of the Black Forest or Sangan, summoning that out, activating Cannon Soldier, so we can get the final piece of Exodia. So we have all 5 pieces of Exodia within 1 activation of Cannon Soldier. And I have never seen the Exodia animation on this. So here you go. And there you go, Exodia the Forbidden One. That is a version of Exodia that they played, and in future lists, all the Exodia pieces went down to 1. But this deck is still highly functional, because if we look at that Forbidden Limited list, all that changed was these cards going down to 1, all the Exodia pieces down to 1. They lost 1 Graceful Charity, they lost 2 Last Will, 2 Monster Reborn, no Monster Reborns, I should say, the 2 Pot of Greeds, and you could just easily fill 10 cards in this deck with other cards that are still super useful, kind of like Call of the Haunted. Let me just double check, Call of the Haunted, because Call of the Haunted is one of those cards that have been around for quite some time, and the deck still works the same. This came out around September of the year 2000. So year 2000, Call of the Haunted, you could have played it in here, but honestly you would just fill things like, you would just put things like Feather Duster, Summoned Skull, Magician of Faith, Man-Eater Bug at 3 because that's a very good card, Ultimate Offering, just one of them, and just other cards as well, because there's quite a bit. You could do Crush card if you really wanted to, because you do have a couple tribute targets. And finally, the last one I would say is something like Delinquent Duo. because this card was very powerful back in the day, and honestly, it's definitely worth it. And if we try this variant of the deck, it still pretty much functions the exact same. We activate our Thunder Dragon, normal summon out our Witch of the Black Forest, set, and just pass until we get enough resources out. And what's going to happen this time? We're going to tribute with the Thunder Dragon, because now it's a big beat. It's a little bigger, and we can get our Cannon Soldier faster. Now what's going to happen? I'm just going to finish out this duel and do that Exodia summon again for you guys to show that this deck is still powerful enough. So if we also get something like Ultimate Offering, we can go, cool, we can summon out multiple monsters. We're just going to get one piece of Exodia right now. And this deck just turns into another type of beatdown with Woboku. Because this deck just had... The decks back in 2000 just had so many versatile ways to play. It's really cool how it functioned. Because right now we could just tribute that, summon out the Summon Skull, and just attack. And Exodia is just another alt win con if the game goes that far. So right there, Cannon Soldier for game. Back in the day, it was just mostly Cannon Soldier for game, or Exodia, or maybe other ways of big beat sticks beatdown. But I hope you guys did like this early into Yu-Gi-Oh part, going into the old formats and seeing what they played, because it's quite interesting of how Yu-Gi-Oh from back then is till today, because how much it changed. But anyways, I've been Bolt Spider. I hope you guys did enjoy, and see you guys in the next video.